Welcome to the Week 17 edition of NFL Previews and Picks. At the Superdome, the Carolina Panthers come in to play the New Orleans Saints. First of all, congrats to Drew Brees. He's a class act, and if Atlanta is mad that the Saints ran up the score to get him the passing yardage mark, they should have tried a little harder to stop him. While the Saints have little to play for at this point, the Panthers have a few things actually to play for. 500 record in the division, and on the road. I'm guessing just because of that, they will not be pulling anything back, which puts the Saints in an interesting position of either having to play their starters longer than they would like, or basically handing the Panthers the game. The Niners are playing at the same time and are the Saints' only worry seeding-wise for the playoffs. My guess is that they try to blow out the Panthers and then rest their players. Either way, Saints win. At Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, the Buffalo Bills come in to play the New England Patriots. I feel sorry for the Bills. I really do. They started off so hot, and then the schedule hit them. They have committed to Ryan Fitzpatrick as their starting quarterback with the big contract. Now, they just have to get him some help. As for the Patriots, they have nothing to play for, having sewn up the number one seed in the AFC, so maybe they will rest some of their players. It will be interesting because Tom Brady can join Drew Brees with the most yards passing in a season. My guess there is the record is not important to Bill Belichick, and he will rest Brady for much of the game. New England still wins. At Mall of America Field in Minnesota, the Chicago Bears come in to play the Minnesota Vikings in an NFC North battle. The Bears basically brought Josh McCown out of retirement because Caleb Haney was ineffective. Josh McCown? Are you serious? Brett Favre would have been a much better choice, even with the ego and the circus. Neither of these teams has a shot at the playoffs, so this is just another game of guys playing for stats and money and maybe even pride. Nah, it's just the money. Chicago wins. At Sun Life Stadium in Miami, the New York Jets come in to play the Miami Dolphins. The Jets have played in 2 straight AFC Championship games. This year, they will have to buy tickets or watch on TV just like the rest of us. Has the Rex Ryan bravado grown stale? Is Mark Sanchez really a franchise quarterback? Whatever the answers are, they will have to wait until next year. As for the Dolphins, they started off terrible, going 0-7. Then started winning with Matt Moore playing at a Pro Bowl level. Then their coach got fired anyway. That old saying about the team wanting to go in a different direction was the reason. Everyone in this game is basically playing for their jobs. That alone could make the game interesting. This will be Jason Taylor's last game, as he has already announced he will retire. That will motivate the Finns, and they will win here. At St. Louis Edward Jones Dome, the San Francisco 49ers come in to play the St. Louis Rams. San Francisco can't catch Green Bay, but they need to keep winning to fend off New Orleans. So expect the starters to stay in as they watch the scoreboard for the New Orleans game. Alex Smith has played great this year under Jim Harbaugh, and some might say he got snubbed for the Pro Bowl. Frank Gore and Michael Crabtree have made great contributions to the resurgent 49ers. Their defense doesn't get enough credit. As for St. Louis, they have absolutely nothing to play for, but there is some sentiment that Sam Bradford might be playing to keep his job. He was the number 1 pick just a couple of years ago and is now having to hear this. Not fair at all. Injuries killed the Rams this year. I think you have to give them one more year to see if they can get back on the positive side of things. This game will not be the one to do that, though, as San Francisco wins. At Lambeau Field in Green Bay, the Detroit Lions come in to play the Green Bay Packers in another NFC North game. Green Bay has wrapped up everything they can. The perfect season is gone. The only thing that really have left is for Aaron Rodgers to try to join Drew Brees and possibly Tom Brady as the all-time leaders in yards passed during the season. Not sure if the Detroit defense is the kind of defense you can do that against. I think they will make that decision early. If he is playing well and the Detroit defense is giving up the yards, he stays in. They try to go for it. If not, Mike McCarthy gets him out of there early and rests him for the playoffs. As for the Lions on offense, Matthew Stafford looks to finish off a great season with Megatron. They could still end up out of the playoffs. They have to take care of the one thing they can, and that's win this game. I think that depends on Green Bay. Assuming Green Bay rests most of its starters for part of this game, the Lions roar out of Lambeau with a win. At the Georgia Dome, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come in to play the Atlanta Falcons. After last season, the Bucs have been a real disappointment this year. The Falcons have built a team that contends each year, but still can't get over the hump. Both of these teams have good young players. Matt Ryan has proven to be a great fit for the type of ball control offense that they run at Atlanta. Josh Freeman is a good young player, but may need a few more pieces around him and possibly a new head coach. Atlanta needs to stay sharp for the upcoming playoffs and has to still be stinging from last week's loss to the Saints. They come out strong and in this game and win. In Cincinnati, at Paul Brown Stadium, the Baltimore Ravens come in to play the Cincinnati Bengals. A couple of games this week will have playoff feels, and this is one of them. These two teams play in the same division, so they know each other pretty well and have a healthy dislike for each other. The Ravens have the number 2 seed wrapped up, and the Bengals are precariously holding on to the 6th seed. This is a game like Cincinnati has not seen in years. They may be young, and maybe a year or two away from really contending, but the Bengals have brought new hope to their fans. If they had a rookie game like they do in the NBA, Andy Dalton would surely be the starter for the AFC. Baltimore is led by their defense, which is getting a little long in the tooth. Maybe that gives them more reason to rest their players this week, heading into the playoffs. Doubt it. Joe Flacco needs to keep stepping up his play to be the real leader on the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens. I think the Bengals actually get the win here. At Cleveland Browns Stadium, the Pittsburgh Steelers come in to play the Cleveland Browns. With nothing much to play for, Big Ben should sit out again this week, nursing that high ankle sprain, and the ageless one, Charlie Batch, gets another start. I swear, he must be 65 by now. This has been an up and down season for the Browns. Some good notes. Colt McCoy has progressed, which is always a good thing. They didn't have Peyton Hillis for much of the season, which has hurt their ability to run the ball. They have to try to sign him to a long-term deal and get him back healthy for next season. On paper, even without Big Ben, the Men of Steel should win this game, but they don't play on paper. Like a few other games this week, this one depends on who gets rested and for how long. If the Steelers rest players, the Browns have a shot. Okay, no they don't. Steelers win. At the Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, the Washington Redskins come in to play the Philadelphia Eagles in an NFC East game. Philadelphia is the last team I would want to play right now, and the Redskins are up next. The Eagles have finally started playing like everyone thought they would at the start of the season. Everything finally seems to be clicking for them. Mike Vick is playing well. LaShawn McCoy is probably the MVP for the team this season. The defense is playing hard. Are they trying to save Andy Reid's job? Don't think they need to worry about that, because I think he's safe. The Redskins have just been a mess all season. A revolving door at quarterback is never a good thing, especially when the revolving door starts with probable Hall of Famer Donovan McNabb. John Beck came in and fizzled. And then Rex Grossman started, and he was, well, gross. Philadelphia wins. At Everbank Field in Jacksonville, the Indianapolis Colts come in to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Whomever thinks the Colts will try to lose this game to get Andrew Luck as the #1 pick in the upcoming draft is nuts. These players have pride and are competitive. Besides, like I said before, many of them are playing for incentives in their contracts. Jacksonville has already started pointing towards next year, towards the future, with Blaine Gabbert as quarterback and whomever will be the coach next year. Close game here, as most division games are, but the Colts have found something over the last couple of weeks with Dan Orlovsky as quarterback and continue winning. At Reliant Stadium in Houston, the Tennessee Titans come in to play the Houston Texans in an AFC South game. This game is another case of one team having nothing to play for and the other having to keep playing hard just in case they can sneak into the playoffs. Since Houston is playing a lot of young players due to injury, I can't imagine them resting anyone for too long. As for the Titans, they will go all out for the entire game and watch the scoreboard at the same time. Who else thinks Mike Munchak will be the next head coach at Penn State? I do, even though he says he won't. Another close division game here, Tennessee wins. At the University of Phoenix Stadium in Arizona, the Seattle Seahawks come in to play the Arizona Cardinals. Seattle still has an outside shot at making the playoffs, but will have to win and get help for that to happen. I wonder if these teams have a guy whose responsibility it is to watch the scoreboard in these final weeks of the regular season. Just a thought. And I also wonder how much he makes. Anyway, Arizona is going nowhere. Tavares Jackson is playing better, but certainly isn't yet to be considered a franchise quarterback for Seattle. They still get the win, though. At Invesco Field at Mile High in Denver, the Kansas City Chiefs come in to play the Denver Bronco, the Orton Tebow Bowl. You remember Kyle Orton, right? He started for the Broncos until he was beaten out by Tim Tebow when the team started off 1-4 this season. Well, here he comes back into Mile High as the starter for the Chiefs. You know he has to have a real chip on his shoulder for this game. As for Tim Tebow, being the competitor he is, you know he needs to show that last week's 3-interception game was nothing more than an aberration. You remember his emotional speech in college? I bet he's listened to that speech a few times this week. Tebow time will be back in Denver as the Broncos get the win. At Oakland Alameda County Stadium, the San Diego Chargers come in to play the Oakland Raiders in an AFC West game. This one is simple. If Oakland wins and Cincinnati loses their game against the Ravens, the Raiders are in the playoffs. Funny thing is, though, San Diego has been playing better as of late, so even though they were basically sleepwalking through the regular season. How Phillip Rivers got into the Pro Bowl, I have no idea. Carson Palmer has not been much better for the Raiders, but I think the Raiders still get the win here. And finally, at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, the Dallas Cowboys come in to play the New York Giants in another game that might as well be a playoff game. Win and you're in. As if that isn't enough, the winner gets home field advantage for the wild card round next week. That could actually be a detriment for the Cowboys, as it seems like opponents are playing at Jerry World better than the home team does. Speaking of the Cowboys, Tony Romo will play with the bruised hand he got last week. Did you see that injury? Ouch. For the Giants, Eli Manning has been playing at an MVP level for most of the season. I like the style Tony Romo plays, but not sure he can stay away from the Giants' defense. G-Men win. And there you have it, the Week 17 edition of NFL Previews and Picks. See you next week at the playoffs.